What should the 49er expectations be heading into this year? And I ask this with all sincerity. We've got a head coach in Kyle Shanahan, who I think everyone around the league respects and thinks is high level. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, and he's lost both of them, and it sucks. But he's heading into year 10 with this team. They've got some veteran pieces that are at the end of their primes, maybe toward the end of their careers. Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams. Who knows if George Kittle's going to be healthy early on in the year, but we think he's coming back at some point. Mike Evans. They got guys on the other side of the ball. High paid players who are making lots of money. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. They've brought in a lot of young guys over the years on that defense. They've got a new defensive coordinator who I think we respect, but we don't think he's a great head coach, but we think he's a respectful, pretty good DC, but you never know with these things when it's a new hire. You've got a franchise quarterback who is on a long-term deal, who is just entering his prime at 27 years old, who has won huge playoff games, knocked off the defending champs last year with a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter in Philadelphia. And he missed some games last year, but when he returned and he got right, he was awesome. Lights out, and took the offense to a whole nother level. Even behind him, you got Mac Jones, who a lot of fans have now, you can win a lot of games with Mac Jones.
Yeah.
You've got an organization that has been knocking on the door time and time again. You have a lot of guys that have played in high-level playoff games. You're in one of the toughest divisions in football with one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl this year, who made a bunch of huge moves in the offseason to set themselves up, adding Myles Garrett, probably getting Aaron Donald out of retirement. They have the MVP of the league at quarterback, and they didn't even win it all last year. The Seahawks did, and they're also in your division. And we know at some point in the AFC, Mahomes is coming back. Who knows what happens with New England, who represented the AFC last year, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, and any other team you want to throw into the contender list. But what is a reasonable expectation for the San Francisco 49ers, given the landscape of the league, given the landscape of their team, their payroll, how things are going to change next year, how deep they are at some positions like wide receiver heading into the year with Ricky Pearsall coming back, with Deshaun Stribling getting added to the mix, bringing in the veteran wide receiver who I referenced earlier in Mike Evans. You got a backup running back you feel a little good about in Kalen Black. You've got an offensive line that has some pieces, but we just don't know. We have a defensive line that has some pieces, but we just don't know. You brought back Dre Greenlaw. You feel good about one of your corners and your slot corner who played really well last year as a rookie in Stout. I'm asking 49er fans sincerely, what are reasonable expectations? You've been to the NFC Championship game. You've been to Super Bowls with this quarterback and this head coach and a lot of these guys. You got a lot of new parts. You got a lot of veteran winner guys who have done things in the playoffs. What's reasonable? What's reasonable when you have the Super Bowl defending champs in your division and a coach who has had your number the last couple times you played him? What's reasonable when you have McVay in your division? What's reasonable when you have the MVP with McVay in your division with the best defensive player in the league in Myles Garrett being added? What's reasonable when they have Devontae and they have Puka? Is it just make the playoffs? Is it win multiple games in the playoffs? Is it get to the conference championship? Is it win the Super Bowl? Is anything short of winning the Super Bowl just unacceptable for Niner fans? What are legitimate, nuanced, reasonable expectations for the 2026-2027 San Francisco 49ers?
So I think it's a great question. I think expectations change at times, but right now the expectation should be conference title game. I think you are healthy. We'll see where George Kittle is at, but Nick Bosa, by all accounts, is going to be here for training camp. You got Fred Warner. You have a healthy Brock Purdy, and you have Kyle Shanahan as your head coach. Are there question marks? Absolutely. The defensive line as a whole is a major question mark. Your first-round pick last year, Micah Williams, I don't even know if he's going to be back for week 1 for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know who's going to be your number 2 guy that you trust. Bryce Huff, he retired. He's not here anymore. Some guys that you're counting on last season, no longer here. Hell, I think the guy that I can count on the most right now might be Deommodore Lenoir in my secondary. Hey, Fred Warner, he's coming off a major injury right now, and I get it. He's Fred Warner. He's all pro. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's sensational. He's also getting up there in age. There is a lot of question marks on this team, but the leadership is still there. And that's what they hung their hat on last year was leadership. Christian McCaffrey is coming back. I would like his workload to be lessened. We shall see. You try to address that in the draft, right? Brian Robinson really wasn't that guy last year. But it comes down to this, Joe, ultimately, in this sport. Do I have an elite head coach? Do I have an elite quarterback? I think the answer is yes on both of those.
I think a lot of Niner fans agree with you.
I think that's
even the most pessimistic on one or the other, or both, Shanahan and Purdy, I think all would agree, like, yeah, they're really good.
I'm not going to get into the nuance of how you define elite, whatever. Is he a top 10 guy when he's on? That's how I'm viewing it. And when he is on, Brock Purdy is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Even his biggest hater would say when he's on, yes.
There you go. And Kyle Shanahan, if he was fired right now, about more than 2/3, if not 90% of the league is going after that guy as their head coach. Not even close in my mind. You stop what you're doing. Go get Kyle Shanahan. He is that dude. Now, defensively, Raheem Morris is going to be that guy. Now, he's got a relationship with Kyle Shanahan. He's won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator with the Los Angeles Rams, though we've been down this road before, Joe. It didn't work with Steve Wilkes, who was defensive coordinator elsewhere. It didn't work when he tried to go the new guy with Sorensen. That was an absolute disaster. It worked when you went back to what you know, and you're Kyle Shanahan. He knew Robert Saleh. 49ers fans knew Robert Saleh, and it worked out well to the tune of Robert Saleh getting another head coaching opportunity. Now, Raheem Morris, Niner fans don't really know here in San Francisco when it comes to coaching their team, but Kyle Shanahan knows him. So I'm going to take him for his word that he has a great relationship with this guy, going back to their Tampa Bay Buccaneers days with John Gruden once upon a time, and it's going to work well. I think it's going to work well. Now, again, you mentioned it. Can the expectations be conference title game or bust when you have maybe the two best teams in your conference in your own division looking ahead of you? That was the matchup last year in the NFC Championship game in Seattle. And it went down to the wire. Rams, Seahawks. I think the Niners are right there. I think they're right there. I think the Seahawks, again, we're all saying like, hey, I don't see them winning this. Well, the Seahawks are going to take a step back in my mind. That's just what happens for Super Bowl teams. Whether you win it or lose it, there is somewhat of a step back. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles last year. They were primed to go back-to-back with all of their players that they had at their disposal. They were primed to do that. And what happened? Injuries, drama, quarterback not liking the wide receiver not liking anybody, the head coach, et cetera, et cetera. Joe, they had all their guys basically healthy in that game against the 49ers. The 49ers were the ones that didn't have anyone healthy. And the Niners won that game in the elements, with the wind, on the road, at that stadium. So everything that could go wrong for the 49ers last year felt like did, and yet they got to the divisional round against the Seahawks. Now, did they finally meet their maker in that? Yes, they did. The Seahawks were healthy. They were clearly the better team. Everything went right for them. You were in the stands for that day. There was a tier difference in that game. There just was. But I think with an offseason, with health, that tier is now shifted back. I think the Niners are right there with the Seahawks. We'll see with the Rams. Everyone's crowning the Rams right now. I got to see it to believe it first.
I mean, they've got it on paper. Their team is really good.
But they're also one injury away. Again, like all these teams, they're one injury away at their quarterback for saying, we're screwed. I don't feel the same way with the 49ers. If Brock Purdy gets hurt, I actually feel, okay, how long? Now, come playoff time, that might be a problem if it's a season-ending injury. But you know what? If I have to right the ship for 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks with Mac Jones, I feel great about that. The Rams can't say that. I don't know if the Seattle Seahawks can say that. Who's that? Jalen Milroe is their backup quarterback up there?
I kind of like Milroe.
I know you like Milroe, but come on. Are they feeling great about him taking over?
No, I trust Mac infinitely more.
Exactly. So, things can happen in a season that can go crazy. And again, it always comes back down to this. Do I trust the head coach and do I trust the quarterback in winning time? I do with this team.
But what is a fair, reasonable expectation given their division, where they're at, and then you contrast that with the Rams and the Seahawks?
I mean, last year, everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and yet they still had an opportunity to get to an NFC championship.
I mean, they could have won number one in the NFC if they would have won Week 18.
They did. And the Seahawks, they were the best team in football last year. They just were.
Yeah.
Which sucks like to say, and I don't think they're going to be that this year. Now, they might be. They might shut me up again. I doubted Sam Darnold all year long. He shut me up. He shut a lot of people up. But I still had faith that the Niners, because of that experience, could get it done at Lumen Field in the divisional round. I talked myself into it when leading up to it, Joe, all week. I was like, this has blowout written all over it. And yet I kept going back to, God, well, Kyle Shanahan's never been one and done. Kyle Shanahan's never not gotten to the conference title game before. Until it happened last year, I was believing in that Niners squad getting to the conference title game because that was the expectation under Kyle Shanahan for so long in San Francisco. And maybe I'm still bullish on that fact that there's still a lot of unproven teams in the NFC for me. Not the Rams, not the Seahawks. They've both won. They deserve their flowers. Those guys have won Super Bowls. Kyle Shanahan's still the one that hasn't in this division. And obviously, I'm not even mentioning the Arizona Cardinals because they're an afterthought right now. They got to prove it. Those are the two best teams in the conference in my mind. I think they could do it, but they got to stay healthy. That's a big ask for this team, Joe, is to stay healthy. Well, if the Niners stay healthy, they could get to the conference title game. That's a reasonable expectations. Excuse me.
Yeah, Kittle went down last year. All the receivers, it felt like, went down last year.
Yeah.
Trent went down for a small period of time last year. The only guy, Brock went down. On offense, the only guys that stayed healthy, really, Christian McCaffrey and Juice.
Which is insane for McCaffrey, because how did we start the season off?
He was the biggest question mark.
He had an injury report with the calf.
I know.
We were doing the season summit, the preview, and Carter's there in his like silver suit or whatever he was wearing. He's like, guys, breaking news. Yeah, he was wearing like sequins or something. I was
the mediator, so I had to wear sequins.
Right, and I think you barely spoke, right? Like that was the funny part.
Barely said a word.
Barely said a word.
When you have 6 peacocks on the stage, it's hard for you to stand out as a butterfly.
It's all right. He did a good job though. Well,
Pigeons and peacocks rhyme.
Well, it's also not hard to stand out when you're 6'9" like Carter is. But he had the breaking news sounder. Guys, breaking news. Christian McCaffrey on the injury report with a sore calf. And then that just took over the whole thing. It's like, oh boy, well, we literally had a conversation. Do we want to adjust our win-loss projections because of that injury report? And I think some of us did. I still had them making the playoffs. But again, as we were talking about the team heading into last season, Joe, I think we were even more down on that Niners team last season than we are on this one. Right?
Yes.
We were. So I think we're a lot more optimistic overall here. And I think it's a great question, 888-957-9570. What should be the realistic expectation for this squad hanging in this season? And for me, it is the conference title game. And what is it for you? Also the conference title game, right?
I'm not sure. I want to see them in training camp, and I want to see them. I want to see them up close and personal.
But I think we could all agree.
I don't know what to make of their young players.
It should be playoffs, though.
Oh,
correct?
Bare minimum playoffs.
Bare minimum. Like, you need to make the playoffs this year.
Bare minimum.
Something went wrong
when
in
you have a franchise
way.
quarterback under contract and he's in the prime of his career, you have to make playoffs.
Let's go to Ryan and San Bernardino wants to join in the conversation. What's up, Ryan? You're on the roast.
Hey, my guys, I'm so excited. You guys are talking Niners football. Football's back. This is great. Great news. Hey, first of all, I just wanted to say I'm very excited about this 49ers draft class, all the way from Stribling to height. Price Sock makes me excited. Grayson Halton. I say this every year, but this year I really feel like the draft class could be special. Also, with the injury of George Kittle, I think, especially with the wide receivers we have in-house, we could expect to see a lot more 3 wide receiver sets. And I think that'll be really good for our offense and help Kyle Shanahan evolve what he likes to do quite a bit. Also, my hot take is that I think Kalen Black, not saying that he is RB1, but he has RB1-like qualities, which I think would allow Shanahan to use McCaffrey in a Deebo-type role when necessary, some jet motions, put him in the slot, and just get more creative. And last, I'll shut up. Kalen Black came from Indiana where they did what a lot? They did a lot of RPOs. Yeah. And I think with Brock Purdy's mobility, I think it would just be a great thing to maybe freeze Myles Garrett for a half second or whatever the case may be with just an RPO every once in a while to freeze the defense. But that's all I got.
Hey, Ryan, you still there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Would you want
sir.
Deebo Samuel back on a 1 year, $5 million contract. He's still out there.
I will say this. If he comes in without the ego and feeling like when he doesn't get touches, he's going to be upset, this and that, I would love to have Deebo back. Absolutely. To have Greenlaw and Deebo back, I think that would help our energy quite a bit, my friends. And also, to your point about what the Niners and the NFC West are facing, it's very likely, maybe not very likely, but they can lose 4 games in the division. They can lose 2 to Seattle and 2 to the Rams without even blinking an eye. So the expectations have to be tempered a little bit.
No, well, I hear you on that. And Ryan, great call. I appreciate the passion. 888-957-9570. What are the reasonable expectations for this Niners upcoming year?
Kalen Black is a workhorse. I'm not sure I agree with that one statement.
Division games are different. I'm not going to say that. And yeah, it's a possibility they get swept by the Rams and Seahawks. They might be the 2 best teams in the conference. Chasky is yet to reveal his own expectation. He's got to wait till training camp and to get through that. But for me, I'm saying it right now, July 22nd, I think conference title game should be the expectation for the squad, which is better than what the expectations were for a lot of fans last season. A lot of people thought last year was a reset year and that they shouldn't look at the playoffs at all as a legitimate expectation.
Yeah, but you didn't even know who your starting linebacker and 3 defensive linemen were to head into the year. You had no idea.
And yet I still picked them to win the division, and they had an opportunity to do that and have the number 1 seed in the NFC with all those injuries, Joe, which, again, right now, they're better equipped to be that team that I thought they would be last year, this year, if that makes sense. They're better equipped to be that. What? You're looking at me. I'm
listening. I'm just trying to follow. You're better equipped this year.
Because a lot of Niner fans didn't think they were equipped at all to make the playoffs last year. They didn't think that was a possibility, which I thought was ludicrous. I was like, make the playoffs? Absolutely they can. Not even that, win the division.
I mean, McCaffrey played 3 games the year prior. So I can understand being, fans of their own team are either way too high on their own team or way too critical.
Sure.
Very few are able to accurately diagnose exactly where they stand league-wide.
Now, I will say this. I thought a lot lesser of the division overall last season than I do right now. This division is stacked. Stacked. The only division I'm taking over, I'm going top to bottom because you still have the Cardinals in here, and they're going to be a dumpster fire, I think, is probably the NFC North. That's the only other division I'm taking that's that stacked top to bottom. That could all 4 be playoff contenders. Outside of the Cardinals, I put the AFC West right there too because they have the Raiders, but they have the Chargers, Broncos, and Chiefs. All 3 of those could be legitimate AFC contenders. The NFC West is no joke, man. No joke at all. And legitimately, if you wanted to make the argument the Seahawks and Rams are the 2 best teams in the NFL, fine by me. Fine by me. And it'd be a hell of a feather in the cap of the Shanahan if they could win this division.
I just go back to a year ago. A year ago, I thought the Detroit Lions were one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NFL.
Things change, man.
Yeah, they're very quickly.
Very quickly.